again, starting off the trading week with a Japanese holiday seems like a bit of a trend from them. And then we're going to look into the Swiss National Bank policy rate, or their interest rate decision. So right now, markets are expecting the rates to be held at 0.0 after last being cut in June. So to give a context on what's happening over in Switzerland at the moment as well, their August inflation data did come back in line with expectations for the year on year. However, the monthly was slightly below. However, where I do think this is actually quite interesting, that markets are actually pricing in a 5% chance of interest rates going into negative territory. I saw a quote on Reuters from the SNB chairman Schlegel, who reportedly hasn't ruled out the possibility of going into negative interest rates, but said it will only happen if it is extremely necessary. Personally, I'm not expecting too much volatility on the Swiss off the back of the announcement, and I do largely think that the moves for the Swiss will largely be based on what happens with the USD. Few factors coming into the USD, one of them being the PMIs. We've got a fair bit of inflation data from there.
Yeah, a lot of the sort of we've kind of got a fairly light sort of week when it comes to a lot of the economic data this week. So it's really the PMIs, or Purchasing Manager Index, just to get a gauge as to these sort of impacts when it comes to the businesses. So we'll get a gauge of that. A lot of the sort of chat will probably be around the Fed chair speaking towards the middle of this week. Plus, we've also got the other sort of central bank speaking. So we've got the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, the European Central Bank. We've got the FMOC, so the US, German, as well as we had the RBA earlier this morning. So quite a lot of central banks are speaking, post the decisions. So it'll be good to get a sort of gauge as to where everyone is aligned around the sort of economic activity, and what the sort of dual mandates are, or any sort of policies that can impact. We do have the US data, so I guess the interesting factor will be around the US GDP, especially with the retail sales, considering they were higher than expected. So that 3.3 will be pretty key, but also looking at the unemployment claims to see how the US employment data is really going. A lot of the conversations around the US is really around the strength of the employment data. So whether it's going to be towards the upside, so we'll wait and see how that plays out. We do have the Canadian GDP as well, so that will be interesting to see how they're seeing everything post their sort of Bank of Canada decision. We've got the consumer price index from the